What's going on, y'all? It's LJ, and it's time to honky tonk. Let's do this.
South the way to go, at the place called Papa Joe's, I heard him say so. About a man named Billy Joe, got in a tango. Fella pulled a knife, Billy pulled a gun. And the kind of outlaw he is, Billy asked him, where do you want it?
And so looking back, it's been almost 2 years since I've filmed a Honkytonkin update, and that is stuff from the country vinyl collection. So to be honest, I just haven't been listening to a whole lot of country music in the past couple of years. Here and there, sure, I'll throw a record on, but more importantly than not, here and there, I'll also grab country music records. When they show up, when the condition is right, when the price is right, it's just not my primary focus. But I'd be lying if I said I didn't absolutely love it and it was still a go-to when I took a break from all things hard rock and heavy metal. And so there are some new things that have shown up. So what got them on the turntable is that I've been making some changes, some adjustments to my system, changing out my stylus, amplifier, things like that. And so you kind of start pulling things that you know really well to see how they sound with the new setup. And what I found was that some of these country records sounded like they've never sounded before. Super happy, and so it took no time to get a dozen off the shelves out of the inbox that I don't believe I've shown before and get them spinning. This is the result of that. So if you dig country music and you dig the honky-tonkin updates, you're gonna dig this. Who knows how long it'll be till the next one, so here we go. From 1957, here is George Jones singing 14 top country song favorites. And this is 14 tracks written or co-written and recorded by George between 1955 and 1957. Man, end to end, this era of George Jones is either high energy or heartfelt, toe tapping or whining and a crying. But no matter how you kick it, it was George Jones writing the honky-tonk rulebook on the fly. Don't believe me? Take tracks like Take the Devil Out of Me, Why Baby Why, or Ragged But Right for a spin, and you'll understand how and why 60 years later, these songs still leap off the groove and grab you. Check them out on YouTube. They're out there to be found, and you'll be instantly infected. Just 26 years old at the time, on his way to the Grand Ole Opry and country legend status. From 1962, next out of the gate, here is Buck Owens, You're For Me. Man, I love me some Buck Owens, and I don't love any Buck Owens as much as I love me some early Buck Owens. And that's right where we are right now. This is the third album from Buck, from the king of Bakersfield. If anything holds this near perfect record back for me, it's just the inclusion of two countrified polkas, I guess it was fair to call them. Thankfully, they're quick though. And the buckaroos on those two tracks and the rest of it sound absolutely phenomenal. Both of those instrumentals will still, as much as I don't dig them because they don't have Buck's vocals soaring over the top of them, they still whisk you back to the streets of Southern California or Tijuana, that era. It's just amazing stuff. Regardless, Ralph Mooney's pedal steel rules the roost. Whistling and whining, pure early 60s honky-tonk. And Buck's vocals, whew, Buck's vocals at this point, they just float effortlessly. Over top, as always. Sticking with Buck, from 1963, here's Buck Owens on the Bandstand. Now this is a little bit different than You're For Me. It's a mix of originals and folk standards that were countrified by Buck and the Boys. Now, given the older material and the variety of writers, On the Bandstand doesn't feel as immediate, fresh, or energetic as You're For Me, which we just looked at. Now, Buck's originals are by far the best moments, but covering other artists was common play at the time. With shared vocals from fiddle player Don Rich and a steel guitar instrumental, the entire track just dedicated to it, from Jay McDonald, this one is more of a band rather than a solo album, and it's a damn fine one at that. Let's jump forward a quarter of a century to 1987, Steve Earle and the Dukes, Exit Zero. This was a recent gift from fellow YouTuber Ryan Rocks 84, a phenomenal vinyl channel you should go check out. This was the second in a string of 3 amazing albums. Steve and the Dukes just cranking out country-tinged Rust Belt Americana from the heartland, right up there with the best of your Springsteens or your Mellencamp's at the time in the mid to late 80s. Man, needle drops and it just pop the clutch, pedal to the floor, right out the door, takes 2 steps towards radio friendly, sniffs the air and then runs 5 steps back, sets the steel guitar down on the floor and brings you 4 more. Absolutely amazing. I have to admit, I'll not be shelving this one anytime soon. It's just that phenomenal of a record and it sounds amazing. Well worth checking out. Ben, you nailed it, brother. Thank you so much. Hello, I'm Johnny Cash. Well, I'm not, but he is. And from 1974, I'm just gonna stop here and just let y'all look at the cover. I've said it 100 times. That is why vinyl. Just look at that. Look at that. 12 inches by 12 inches. Your device can't do that. Regardless, I digress. With a spoken word intro that'll bring tears of patriotic joy to your hardened eyes, 12 tracks, and a cover that says it as well as any could have, or before, or since, ragged and representative of the country at the time, that flag continues to fly. Now from truck driving to factory working scandal to pollution, the once young man in black now stands proud as a denim-clad family man. He invites you to his supper table and he serves a humble range of emotion and truth, tears and laughter like only Johnny Cash could on Ragged Old Flag. Heading back to the 60s, because that's just when country music was at its peak. From 1967, here's the Hag, Merle Haggard and the Strangers with Branded Man. The 4th album from the Hag, and like Mama Tried a year later, the Branded Man tells the kind of tales you can only expect from a country tune. A once imprisoned man, in this case, now carrying a number stenciled on his back wherever he goes. He just can't get away from it. Of course, it's rooted in personal history from the former inmate turned Bakersfield legend himself. Here, you just have a string of amazing tracks, aided by Glenn Campbell on guitar, Ralph Mooney from Buck Owens and the Buckaroos on steel guitar. There's a song here for every loser, and they just don't make them like this anymore. Same time period, 1967, here is Donald Little, aka Johnny Paycheck, hot off a 5-year stint in George Jones and Porter Wagner's band, and a full 10 years before he'd tell his boss to
Take this job and shove it.
Like any good jukebox, someone's gonna spike the playlist with its ears in the beer, track or 2. And the record is no worse for it, because between originals and covers, there's a dozen more up-tempo, boot-stomping country classics, with Lloyd Green's steel guitar stealing the spotlight. 14 in total, 2 plays for a dime, simpler times from a guy that knew a thing or two about juke joints. Dipping back a few years, here's Marty Robbins' RFD from 1964. Here, after things like Gunfighters and trail songs from the late 50s, that cowboy stuff he did, Marty is back in a to-the-roots country groove. And he moves it along here at a slow and steady giddy up and get along. Now, if you can get up in the morning gallop, no boot stomping on Marty's wooden floor, just those lush Marty Robbins vocals. A few piano keys, some steel guitar accents, a little soft shoe snare, and a choral accompaniment or 2. Thankfully, because that's not necessarily my thing unless it's very, very, very metered throughout the album. And it makes a solid album. And a pristine first US pressing in 53-year-old shrink wrap to boot. Who can say no? I could. You say no? You could. You didn't say. I couldn't say no. Riding Down South from 1977. Here is Bobby, Bears, Me, and McDill. 1977. Hey, let's be honest. The tail end of country music being worth a square of shingles. Here, Bobby rolls into Muscle Shoals. And while it's not without a couple of filler tracks, I'll be completely transparent. Bobby's humor, 2 sheets to the wind drawl, y'all, and fantastic musicianship on this album more make up for any of the weaker moments. And they make for an authentic country album, as could be expected coming out of the late 70s. Lloyd Green, how many times have we heard his name in this video? Steel plucking the steel like an expert. The genre is incestuous. The man's a machine. Half steel guitar will travel, this time with Bobby Bear. Think they all work out? They don't. From 1986, here is a blind buy, and this is the BREAKHEART Bandits, Don't Take Our Guns. Check out the cover. Check out the cover. Recorded in Rhode Island, tiny little Rhode Island, and released on independent Raccoon Records. You know what this is? It's a better cover than an album. And it's best to leave the redneck stuff guys to Skinnerd, because they just do it better. This is bowling alley quality Kentucky windage. The band ain't half bad, thankfully, but the vocals, second-rate Elvis impersonator. Seriously, I headed in with low expectations. I've learned my lesson by now. And although I couldn't push myself through to side 2, admittedly, I dig the cover. They don't all work out, but sometimes they do. Like Moon Mullican, I'll sail my ship alone. Moon is the Texas king of the country western hillbilly boogie woogie piano players. Apparently, I didn't know this until I spun this and decided to read about it. Jerry Lee Lewis, the Killer, has covered many a Moon Mullican track, and he cited the man as an influence. Reading that, hearing this, I get it. This is a quick collection of early country western singles from a time before that dirty old rock and roll had any influence on the genre, and the genre itself was still therefore pure and untainted. True to the early days of the Grand Ole Opry, where Moon himself spent some time, use YouTube, use the internet, check out I'll Sail My Ship Alone, and tip your hat to Old Moon. Time to wrap this up. From 1969, here's the no fooling, straight to the heart singing of Hank Snow. Straight off the back, and this is Hank Snow's I Went to Your Wedding. This is a collection of story songs about lovers and losers, marriage and divorce, love and heartache. That is country music. And this is Grandpa's country and western, and the music that his log cabin walls and my little ears absorbed as a kid. So I was indifferent at the time, and it's not my favorite period now, but damn if I haven't grown to appreciate it. The Canadian communicator, Hank Snow. Now Hank didn't just sing, but he sold his story. And it all moves a little slow, but when the mood hits, and it's not all that often, I'm glad it's here and Grandpa's here. And that's it, y'all. There's your honky-tonkin' country music update for this 2 years. Who knows when the next one will be, but thanks for taking the time to check this out. Feel free to leave a comment below if you have one, and I'll see y'all in the next video. Later, y'all.